Welcome to the show. Today we're talking about something that most of us don't think we struggle with, but something that quietly shapes our lives every day: idols. When we hear that word, we think of ancient statues and false gods, but modern idols don't look religious. They look normal. They look like comfort, money, relationships, self-worship, politics, pleasure, or image. An idol is anything that takes the place in our hearts that only God was meant to fill. These things promise what only God can give: security, meaning, joy, and identity. And when we give them that power, they begin to rule us. The danger of idols isn't that they're always bad. It's that they're often good things made ultimate things. And what we turn to for peace, purpose, or escape often reveals where we truly worship.
In this series, we're going to ask honest questions. What do I run to when I'm afraid? What do I believe I must have to be okay? Because God doesn't expose these idols to shame us, He exposes them to free us. So as you listen today, lean in. Listen not just with your ears, but with your heart, and be open to what God may be inviting you to lay down so you can pick up something better. Let's grind.
All right, welcome back. Where our goal is to enlighten, encourage, and entertain. I'm Chris, and this is part 2 of the Idol of Money, part of our Idol series, and I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Matt for the left-handed shake.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to be back on the mic with you again, brother, as we dive into this Idol of Money. It's been a lot of fun. Before we get into that, though, I just want to talk a little bit about my turn, the left-handed shake of the week. And remember, our goal in that, guys, is to be vulnerable in our interactions with other people and let God do the work. So I was on a work lunch, actually, a few weeks ago. It was a buddy that invited me to lunch who actually was a previous left-handed shake from episodes way in the back. Yeah. But anyway, he brought with him another friend of his, a colleague of his, another young man as well, and another young Christ follower. And just had a great conversation. He's starting up his own franchise, and just kind of wanted to be introduced to me because he had good referral from our mutual friend, and just I just like I normally do, just want to try to cultivate relationships with people, let God do the work, be vulnerable. And so we just started having some great conversations about obviously business, but also from faith to family and background. And it was just a good opportunity for me to kind of connect with both of these guys again. But it was really cool too. One of the things that this guy shared with me, is that he was sharing to me how him and his wife are struggling to have a baby, their first child, and they're in their young early 20s, early to mid 20s, and the point of bringing that up with all you guys here is just to typically you don't really get into a topic of that magnitude at a work lunch, right? Within the first hour of meeting somebody, right? The point is that by me willing to lay down my shield and be vulnerable about my situation and things I shared with them, a lot of things I've shared on this podcast where I don't need to go through it all again, but it allowed him to be willing to set down his shield as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that kind of vulnerability, like we've talked in the past, just being vulnerable opens the door for more vulnerability and to develop those relationships. And so it wasn't just this guy decided to start talking about something so serious in their relationship, in their marriage, that he just opened up to you. It wasn't magic. Like, it just didn't happen. It was you did something to stir that in him.
I like to think so. God did the work, but I think when he showed up to eat some barbecue, he wasn't thinking about that. He was thinking about business or whatever, right? But that's just how things go. When you're willing to, have that posture of vulnerability, like to call it, and to have those open conversations with people, you allow God at the seat of the table, and you allow just things to start working, And right. Since then, we've had a great conversation. Then, looking forward to connecting with him more in the future. Been praying for him and his wife. and hopefully that he's out there doing it with somebody else the same way. And that's ultimately what this whole movement of left-handed shake's all about.
Yeah, that's really great, Matt. And I'll be praying for him and his family as well. Hopefully they can have that baby.
Absolutely, man. Me too. Well, great, man. Well, I want to get into our back to our topic of the week, of course, which is our second installment of the Idol of Money series. I hope you guys got to listen to the first episode. This is going to be a continuation of that. Remember, we're going to give you guys some points here to talk about the Idol of Money as from a worldly point of view, and also contrasting it from a biblical point of view. But before we get to that, let's talk about what an idol is. You got that definition for us, Chris?
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, I've got the definition. So for this series, we've defined idol as, in the Bible, an idol is any physical object, image, or concept that is given the worship, devotion, or importance rightfully belonging only to God.
Yes, sir. That's what it is. So this first point of today, call it point number 3. The world says that more is always better. Is where the Bible says contentment is wealth. So the world will tell us, of course, that it's important to upgrade constantly. Mm-hmm. Growth is measured by accumulation, and enough is never enough. Essentially, consumer culture thrives on dissatisfaction. So we're always looking for that, that greener pasture, right? That bigger TV, that fancier car, right? The bigger house, whatever it is, it's never enough at the end of the day.
That's right. I don't know how many iPhone editions they're going to come out with. I recently upgraded mine to a new one, and I'm like, man, I hate every minute of that, of going in there. Like,
yeah.
For me, there's 2 things I really hate doing in life. Like, ultimately, just really despise doing it. One is buying cars. I don't like going and doing that. And the other is buying phones. And I just, upgrading that technology again, like, it's an endless cycle. They've got you in that loop.
Yeah.
And so just like this point that you just said, consumer culture thrives on dissatisfaction. And so I swear the updates they're pushing to your phone just make your phone work less every time. Every time you get a new update, it just sucks more. And so you just constantly want to update it and upgrade your phone. And they just suck you in with it. And so to this point, that's what the world's doing.
Right.
It's just pulling you in, thinking you've got to have more.
Yeah, and it's like it's never enough. It's an endless cycle, and these updates that come through, there's always like one little thing that's off. So it makes you know what, I got to get that next update to fix that one little thing.
Right.
And then the next update comes and the same thing. It has one thing missing. Like, oh, sorry, you got to come back for the next one, right? So you're never truly, it's an endless loop, right? It's marketing at its best, right? But at the end of the day, it's not godly, it's worldly.
That's right. And I mean, and even just to apply this to our bank accounts, it's easy to put that goal in there. We used to follow some guys that had a podcast, pretty high up podcast in the rankings there. And they talk about, you got to have this money in the bank for an emergency, and you got to have all these other things. And that's great. But it's easy to just get completely focused on making that comma happen or making that amount happen in your account, and to just completely forsake everything else just to get to that. And so, and when does that become enough? And so it's easy to get lost in, you just got to keep piling money up as high as you can. And so for me, it's one of those where I've learned, like, there's never going to be enough in that account. But if you're looking at there's never going to be enough in there, then we're trusting the wrong thing.
That's right, man. I mean, I think it's important to find that contentment, and it's only one place to find it, right?
That's right.
So we got our biblical contrast here to go against that. First point of that would be, we got some scripture for you here. 1 Timothy 6:6-8, summarizing that, says, godliness with contentment is great gain. And I like this one too, Chris, from Ecclesiastes 5:10. Here it comes. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity.
Man, that one's good.
Yeah, they're hammering it.
Yeah. I like Hebrews 13:5. It says, keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we got to just keep that in mind. Like, it's not about all of the things of this world. It's not about all the money, all of the brand new gadgets and phones and upgrades and all of those things. We got to be chasing contentment and chasing him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what that looks like for you guys, but I want you guys to really challenge that in the world today where we have, there's so many things that are grabbing our attention, right? You got to find out whatever it is to make you content, how much is too much, right? Where do you stop, I think my wife and I, we live a comfortable life. We could certainly do more and spend more if we want to, and do more fancier things and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really build lasting happiness. I think you got to find that through the Lord. And I'm thankful to have a wife that in a relationship with her that we don't have to continue to pursue an endless loop, I guess we can call it.
Right. Yeah. It's really just learning to cultivate that and just grow that contentment. And I think for me, growing up and not having a lot, we had to learn to be content with what we had.
Yeah.
And so it may not have been the name brand clothes or pants or shoes or whatever. We didn't get the brand new fancy ball caps or starters jackets or whatever else that was cool back then. Mm-hmm. Like you were just glad to have a backpack that kept your books in it, to walk to school and some food in your belly and, some shoes on your feet. And so, it was just learning to be content with that. And so I think that, if we're not able to teach our kids those kind of things nowadays on how to be content with what we're providing for them, what God has ultimately provided for us, like we talked about in the last episode, then we're missing it. We're missing the target there. And so really we have to learn to be content in everything.
That's right. So if you guys find yourself in that loop of contentment, man, we just pray that you get on your knees and you ask God to show you that. Allow Him to show you something better.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
So moving on to our second point today, our fourth point in regards to the idol of money. The world says that money equals power and control, as where the Bible says money equals surrender and freedom.
That's right.
So the world's message of money gives us options, influence, and leverage. The more you have, the less you need anyone. And financial control equals life control.
Man, that you're like stepping on my toes there a little bit, Matt. I'm sorry. I do feel like there's a lot of times where because we do have that money, we have options.
Yeah.
And I've got money in the bank now, so I can do this or do that. We can go on this trip, or we can not go on this trip, or we can do all of these other things, or we can upgrade the house, or we can do all of that. And I think it's easy to get lost in that. And you're just you begin that cycle of, I'm going to work my brains out, and now I get to spend the spoils of that for whatever upgrade that we want to do next, or whatever trip we want to take next. And it's easy to lose God in there.
It can be, and look, we're not saying that you don't, Christian people and godly people can't have possessions, can't have, significant amounts of money, but how's your heart react to that? How is it the center of your universe? Is it your idol? Or is it just, a byproduct of what God has given you because you put Him first?
Right. Yeah. I like the other point that you made there is financial control equals life control. So when you can control your money, you get to control your life.
Yeah.
And
that's what the world says.
That's right. That's what the world's telling you. And I'm here to tell you, man, just because you got money in the bank doesn't mean you control it.
No, it seems like the money controls us.
Yep. That's about it. Exactly.
Right.
So so that's what the world's telling us on how the money gets to drive our power and control. But we have biblical contrast for that as well. And so Matthew 6:24, it says, "No one can serve two masters, for he will either hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." And as we were putting this episode together, Matt, I was thinking about that. And I told you as we were writing these down, like, we got to read this one. I don't think we could make it past a episode about the idol of money and not talk about you're either going to serve money or you're going to serve God. You're going to do one or the other, and that's about it.
Right. So if you listened to the first one and you wondered where that Matthew 6:24 is, well, there you go.
Here you are.
We just made you listen to the second one to make sure you get it. But no, you're right. That's probably out of all the verses we could come up with from the idol of money, this 2-part series. I mean, that's definitely top of the list right there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because the world just tells us so much to elevate money over God, that it's just a slippery slope, man. You get to that point, then that's where the loop starts, and you never be content. Everything we talked about, really. I mean,
Right.
you have to really take control of money and make sure that it's never above God.
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I like in James 4, 13 through 15, it says, life is not ultimately in your control. And what a good reminder of that.
Yeah, that's a great one. We also have 2 Corinthians 9:7. I'll read this one. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. I love that part, man. Cheerful giver. I heard that a lot in sermons over the years, in churches over the years, in my life, and that's so true, man. I mean, if you're just like giving because out of just obligation or with white knuckle grip, I mean, it's like I think you're missing so much, I mean, it's like we've talked about here on this podcast before. It's a blessing, we get to do this, right? We get to have this podcast here with you guys. We're blessed to have this opportunity, live in a world that allows us the freedom to do that. We should have that same mindset when we give our finances and our money to our local church or in charities or anything that we feel that God has led us to do. We get to do that. He's blessed us with this money. We're now stewards of it, as we talked about in episode 1. Let's be cheerful and do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, this verse, as we were also putting this together, Matt, to me, this one stands out as this is the heart check.
Yeah,
for it. We get to be generous. We get to be a cheerful giver. It's where's your heart at in that giving. And so I've just like you, I've heard many a pastor get up and give a giving or tithing, spiel, and they're talking about your heart posture, your heart posture, your heart posture. And really that's what this verse is like, what is your heart posture when you're giving that money? Because, ultimately, like we talked about earlier, that money wasn't ours anyway. Mm-hmm. And so are you stingy and greedy and holding on to that money? Like that's all you get? Or are you going to give it away because God gave it to you, and allow him the opportunity to bless you some more? I just think it's really, really, what are we doing with our heart in that situation?
Right. And are you doing it first? Are you doing it at the end? Are you covering all your bases first, paying all your bills first, and then, okay, God will give you a little bit of whatever's left over? Mm-hmm. Or are you jumping to the fact that, hey, I just got paid. I get to give God some money back.
That's right.
I mean, it was all his in the first place. It's just, I think that's where it starts. I think and this has been, I got to admit, I mean, we're not immune to this, guys. Just so y'all know, I mean, Chris and I have gone through our own individual battles with money, as anybody has. So we're not certainly saints. Everything we've told you guys, we had to learn ourselves the hard way. At least for me, multiple times probably. Yeah. And there's been times that I've gone back and forth on this. It's just something that the enemy is. I can't speak for him, obviously, but it seems like money to me is the biggest, biggest pull, from our enemy.
Oh yeah.
So it's so critical to have money, and to live and to pay bills and to have things you need in life. So it's necessary to have it. But it's that heart posture around it that the enemy wants to really capture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he can influence the way your heart reacts and interacts with money, he can influence how you're going to give that money or not, and how it's going to be used by other folks just by your heart posture towards them or your lack of generosity towards them. So I think it's really important. The enemy really does prey on us there.
Absolutely, and that's and when he gets you on the money, it's other dominoes are easy to fall, because it always throw money back in your face. Well, you didn't really give last time, so what difference does it make to go do this other sin or whatever? I mean, you're already pretty messed up anyway, right? So just do one more, know.
Yeah, we'll just keep rolling backwards.
Yeah, know. So it's slippery slope.
It is.
So,
it is.
But if you get on firm grounding with money, everything at least for me, in my personal experience, it all kind of starts there, and everything else seems to be a little easier.
Well, and for me, it's like a lot of times that faith journey, like you get saved and you're, walking towards Jesus and you're becoming more like him and all these things. You're making steps in your prayer life. You're getting in the word and like you're starting to progress and even develop some of those relationships, like we've talked about in previous episodes where you've got your Paul and your Timothy and like you're getting all of these ducks in a row. And, sometimes it does feel like money's the last piece that falls in. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people might be, okay, I'll give Jesus my life today, and raise their hand at church and like, they felt the Spirit move. And that's a great first step. But as we're progressing down that line in our journey, I think it's important to go, hey, if we're going to let God be the God of everything in our life, that includes money. And so some of us tend to roll that in pretty quick and some of us don't. And sometimes it's one of those where like, we're good at talking about letting God rule our life, but when it comes to the money aspect, it's like, maybe I can handle this myself. And so I once heard one of our pastors, he said that I would much rather live with 90% of my money blessed than 100% unblessed, right? Because he was given the tithe right off the top of that. And so that first fruits. And so for me, it was like, wow, that's kind of interesting way to put it. But it's like, do I really trust God enough to give him that money? Because I know, like we talked in the last episode, there was a lot of times there wasn't a whole lot of money in the bank. Mm-hmm. And so with that being the case, like, that money that I was making, that might just barely cover the rent and the gas for the month and, and some food. And that's about it. And so how do we really trust God with that? And, it is just leaning into him and having that faith and believing that he's got us. And, this practice of being generous and believing that God's got us, that we have the opportunity to give and to be cheerful in doing that. We're trusting in that, knowing that he's got us there.
That's right, man. I mean, and I admit I was one of those people, that money was one of the last things for me, to truly adopt. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, that was a while ago, but nowadays I look at it's the first domino, I mean, and that was just me in my own journey, had to get there, and certainly had to fumble through it a lot and learn from mistake after mistake after mistake. Hopefully that doesn't sound too familiar to you guys out there, but I'll pray for you if it does. But nonetheless, I think the quicker you start with the money, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I know for me, it's one of those where anytime that we have any extra income come in, like God's still working on me in this area where it's like, that first bit of money goes to him. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, I'm always just shocked that we had extra money come. Like, wow, this is great. And my wife's like, we're tithing. And she just immediately tithes on that money. Bam. I mean,
that's the way to do it.
It's gone. And so, and for me, it's one of those, like, I'm celebrating that we got some extra cash. Yeah, that's great. But even more so, it's like, I'm celebrating that we get to give that part back to God and then look at it and go, hey, this is above and beyond what we had before. So now I can be extra generous with this. And so that leads right into this other verse, Matt, that we were going to talk about. This Acts 20:35. It says, "In all things I've shown you that by working hard in this way, we must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus. He himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive." And so while it is a blessing for us to receive that extra money, that extra income in, it's even more of a blessing to be able to give it.
That's right, man. That's it right there. It sums it up really well, Chris. So these 2 points, y'all, are just fantastic, to remind everybody, let's be content. Let's seek contentment with our money and in our lives. And also let's seek surrender and freedom when it comes to money, and have those 2 things at front of mind. And we'll be in line with God, and we'll make sure that the money never becomes an idol, and our God is always elevated above money.
Yeah, that's right. So as we kind of start closing up this part of the episode, let's go ahead and chat about some of those heart questions, Matt. I know we left our episode last time with a few questions. So this one, we got these 4 or 5 questions here, and it's the first one is, do I feel safer with money than with God?
That's right. And then the second one here, do I obey God even when it costs financially? Yeah.
Yeah. The third one says, does generosity bring me joy or anxiety?
And the fourth one, would losing income shake my identity? Wherever the answer reveals tension, that's where spiritual work begins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a good indicator. So if any of those questions touched a nerve with you, I know they kind of raise the little flags in my mind on some of those. So as soon as they do, that's where we kind of need to do some spiritual work.
That's right. So as we always do every episode, or this is actually a second part, we're going to talk about how to live it out. How can we put this in our day-to-day lives? So Chris and I have got some exciting ways to do that here, some practicality of it. So Chris, why don't you go over our daily ways to live it out?
Yeah. So for daily activities that we can do to help live this out, we're gonna pray. We're gonna ask God, you are my source, and we're gonna thank Him for that provision.
And then weekly goals would be to give intentionally. Obviously, when you get paid, you may not get paid every week, but give when you can. Give when you receive, I should say. Also, review spending prayerfully. So ask God to help you manage your finances, so you actually have, you do feel that blessing on your 90%. And then also practice contentment. Very important there in a world that always requires you to be dissatisfied, as we talked about.
Yeah, for sure. And then as we look out farther into a monthly goal, so we want to give beyond comfort somewhere. So we want to be able to stretch ourselves in that giving. And also, finally, we want to evaluate whether money is driving all of our decisions.
That's great. There's some really practical goals for y'all to live it out. Man, I really enjoyed this, Chris. It's been fun, man, to get back on the Idle series and do this money with you.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm really looking forward to our next one.
That's right. So we got more in the Idle series coming up soon. So come back and see us soon. All right, that wraps up this episode of the Discipleship on Repeat podcast. If this fired you up, stretched your faith, or helped you get closer to what matters most, God, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and send it to someone who really needs to hear it. This isn't just a podcast. It's two guys chasing Jesus and inviting you to run with us. So hit replay, keep showing up, and keep growing in your walk.
Until next time, keep grinding.